The concessions to illegal immigrants in the United States is part of a plan that has been orchestrated by American economic elites. Currently, they are implementing a third world-style economic structure. We are living through a global economic reset, whereas the American middle class will soon be non-existent. This video will briefly explain what the global reset is and how this reset is happening right under the noses of Americans. It will explain why illegal migrants are a privileged class. The Great Reset is a term that was first articulated in 1971 by the European Management Forum, which has come to be known as the World Economic Forum. The WEC's strategic partners include 100 of the leading companies from around the world like Johnson & Johnson, Bank of America, BlackRock, and Google. The group's agenda is to address capitalism's weaknesses to create a more efficient global system. This involves cooperation by stakeholders as opposed to competition. This is contrary to pro-capitalist rhetoric, which emphasizes competition as the essence of capitalism. The WEC also purports to seek strategies to address climate change and sustainable development. They've also agreed to help finance the United Nations climate change agenda. There are a few more clearly expressed goals of the economic reset, as expressed by the World Economic Forum. This is where you come in. One of their goals is to use their resources to establish digital governance. This includes the efficient implementation of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or 4IR for short. Michael Rectenwald, author of numerous books related to the global economy, describes the 4IR as follows. The 4IR marks the convergence of existing and emerging fields, including big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics. The foreseen result will be the merging of the physical, digital, and biological worlds, which presents a challenge to the ontologies by which we understand ourselves and the world, including the definition of a human being. According to Rectenwald, the Great Reset favors unfettered immigration, and their policy seeks to lower the economic status of people in wealthier nations like the U.S. relative to that of people in poorer regions of the world. In summary, the reset seeks global governance by a coalition of corporations, governments, and institutions. The process will phase out smaller business entities that are not favored by the state. Machines and humans will come together in a way only imagined in fiction. The most privileged workers of the world, particularly those of the United States, will be forced into a lower economic and social tier. Americans are baffled by the concessions that are being made to the entitled hordes of illegal migrants. Big business welcomes illegal migrants because this is a way of replenishing the labor force. They are replacing workers like you that have more political capital, social capital, and much greater expectations in regard to living standard. The social consequences that are emerging from the illegal importation of your replacement, such as budget shortfalls, rampant violence, and the exclusion of Americans from social programs, is the problem of everyday Americans. It is your punishment for not being rich.
More migrants crossed into the U.S. on Monday than any other day in history.
This week, the city of Denver began cutting hours at recreation centers. It's the first in a series of concessions as the city braces for a $180 million budget shortfall to fund migrant support efforts.
This was a scene last Thursday at around 11 a.m. According to the NYPD, they responded to a 911 call about a man causing a disturbance at the migrant shelter on Randall's Island.
According to migrationpolicy.org, there were over 2.5 million encounters with illegal migrants at our borders for the year 2023. In December 2023, the USA had 250,000 illegal migrants come into the USA via the border with Mexico, which is the highest number of illegal migrants for any month since May of 2022, when 224,000 illegal migrants entered the country. Americans generally direct their anger at the migrants themselves. However, their discontent should be directed at the politicians they elect. Do you really think that a country with advanced aerospace and military technology programs cannot protect a border? I have news for you Americans. Those migrants are here to replace you. That's why the business sector, via the government that is under their control, is making us American citizens pay to get low-earning replacements acclimated to our country. You Californians, Texans, New Yorkers, and ultimately all Americans are paying out of our pockets for airline flights, bus travel, food, prepaid credit cards, and other concessions.
California could soon pay illegal immigrants to not work. It's the latest state incentive to pay unemployed illegal immigrants up to $300 a week.
California already supplies free medical insurance, Medicaid, to illegal immigrants, as well as driver's license. As you said, it's $300 a week for up to 20 weeks, and state officials would not be allowed to contact former employers to validate their status.
Please like and subscribe for our updates. In January of 2023, I visited a storage facility that I've used for years. On every previous occasion, I was greeted by a competent English-speaking person. The young woman that tended to me that day was a foreign person. Her comprehension of English was poor, and the fulfillment of her responsibilities was worse. I eventually had to work with a competent employee to adequately complete my business with that company after the paperwork was done incorrectly by the cheap replacement worker that was there alone on Sunday. I had a similar experience at a convenience store. I asked for alcohol and the foreign worker directed me to beer and such. I explained that I wanted rubbing alcohol and he had no idea of what I was referring to. This is not the first time that big business and their representatives in government have used immigration to import workers with lower expectations as a tool to keep wages low. Throughout the 19th century, American workers made considerable advancement, led by the National Labor Union and the Knights of Labor. In response, from 1870 to 1900, over 12 million migrants and potential workers were invited to the country from Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, and China. Today, about 14% of Americans are migrants, which is tied for the highest percentage in history with immigration in the late 19th century. Immigration in the 19th century was in response to the advancement of the American labor movement. The goal was to import cheaper workers that were not politically astute. That is what is happening now in the midst of the economic reset that we are experiencing. Americans are seeing the effects on the ground, but are unable to mount a force against it. American society is living in a new world of hyperinflation, debt, and low wages. Throughout 2022, prices were up 6 to 9% beyond prices in 2021, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Throughout 2023, prices were up 3 to 6% above prices in 2022. The Federal Reserve and the Biden regime have extolled these numbers as evidence that the USA economy is on the right track. However, the Biden regime has been dishonest with Americans regarding the condition of the American economy. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the cost of food rose 11.4% in 2022 and another 5% in 2023. From January 2020 to December of 2022, the median cost of a home rose 46%. You can clearly see that necessities like food and housing are higher than the inflation numbers released by the government's Bureau of Labor Statistics. Wages and salaries increased 5.1% for the year 2022 and 4.3% for 2023. When adjusted for inflation, the 2023 federal minimum wage in the United States is around 40% lower than the minimum wage in 1970. These numbers indicate that the American middle class and the working class as we know them are currently being eradicated. To survive with these jobs, you'll need to live with more than 2 working adults to a house. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, mortgage delinquencies are up significantly for the fourth quarter of 2023. The San Francisco Federal Reserve asserts that Americans have depleted their savings as of December of 2023. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, while working-class Americans are becoming poorer, corporate profits were up 22.6% for 2021 and 9.8% for the year 2022. While the middle class is eroding, the rich are getting filthy rich. Throughout 2022, I noticed that Americans had grown increasingly unhappy and confrontational with each other. Inflation had grown out of control in my home city of Houston, Texas. Parks that used to have a homeless person or two began to serve as home for droves of Americans that have fallen on hard times. By all reports that were coming in from the rest of the country, it really seemed like the United States as a nation was experiencing a rapid economic and social decline. By early 2024, I noticed things had gotten worse. Prices are higher, customer service is poorer than ever, and you no longer get a bang for your buck, or not even a pop. So let me put the pieces together for you. The USA's financial sector, along with their global governmental and corporate allies, have orchestrated a global economic reset. They are dealing with the decline of the dollar by becoming excessively rich. The costs of the devalued dollar are being absorbed by the middle class and the working class. The 1% that the banks give you on your savings doesn't come close to the high rate of inflation. Furthermore, the bankers that are giving you 1% are making 14% on the dollars that they are holding for you. The chances of the American people uniting as a formidable coalition to undermine the plan to institute a third world economy is slim to none. The cultural, racial, and social divisions of working-class Americans are too strong to mount a meaningful challenge. The illegal immigrants represent a new class of protected residents.
Police, right here, as you can see, trying to break up a group of young men outside a migrant shelter Saturday night. At one point, the men started punching and kicking two of the officers who suffered minor injuries. 5 suspects were eventually arrested on felony charges and manhunt. All of those arrested were staying at the shelter and were released without bail. When asked if the asylum seekers should be deported, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said it is something that should be looked at.
Because of the new privileged labor force, middle-class and working-class Americans will be forced to accept lower wages, lead a more minimalist lifestyle, move to Mexico, or take up residence in the local park. It is time for Americans to be proactive in establishing an alternative plan or two for their income strategies and retirement strategy, and perhaps take this opportunity to reset ourselves. Don't put all of your reserves in the bank. It would be wise to hold some of your reserves in gold. Establish some self-generating sources of income. Throughout the course of your day, don't forget to nourish your spirit.
Don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe and notification bell to stay updated for more great videos.